This is the Money Seed Podcast, where we discuss all things investing, plain and simple, the way it should be. Please remember, this show is for educational and entertainment purposes only and is not intended to be investment advice. Welcome back to the Money Seed Podcast. I'm thrilled to host Sjofors. Per is also known as the Price Whisperer. Per has been the CEO of over 4 companies. He has international experience from working and managing companies in various different countries. He currently lives in Los Angeles, California, and he helps clients find the right price for their products and services. I believe, Per, you have helped over 700 clients thus far find the optimal price for their product. Per, welcome to the show.
Well, Gabor, thank you very much for having me, and thanks for inviting me. And I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Thanks very much. Glad to have you. Per, I guess when I first came across your name, the Price Whisperer, if I want to start off a conversation being the devil's advocate here, I thought, what is the big deal about pricing? People go to business school, and when you go to business school like I did, you just get this very simple lecture on pricing, right? And it's usually you have demand on the y-axis, price on the x-axis, and you have this nice straight line, and they tell students, if price goes down, demand goes up, and if price goes up, demand goes down, and it's really simple. Yeah. What's wrong with that picture?
Well, everything, just about everything. You spend 3 or 4 years in business school, and pricing is taught in an afternoon, and it's very, very simplistic, and it doesn't take into account how we as humans make purchase decisions, which in recent years has been examined quite deeply in an academic field called behavioral economics. And there's 3 Nobel Prize winners in behavioral economics. And what we do in my company is that we stand on these guys' shoulders, and we take their academic research and we make it into practical, a process that leads to practical business results, The particular guys, one is called Herman Singer, one is, his name is, no, I forgot that. And the last one is Dick Thaler, right? So, they all got their Nobel Prize because they, in economics, as a part of behavioral economics. And that is all about how we make decisions, right? And how we specifically make purchase decisions. And what they teach you in business school it's just a theory that assumes a lot of things that are completely wrong, right? Those straight lines assume that all the products or services are equal, complete substitutes for each other. They assume that all the circumstance for the buyer is identical. They assume that every buyer have the exact amount of money, resources available, and they assume that buyers are making rational decisions. And we don't have to think about it for very long to realize that none of this is true. Circumstances are always different. Products or services are never complete substitutes. People have different access to funds, whether it's consumers or whether it's business to business with different budgets and so forth. And we are humans. We are not making rational decisions, which is one reason advertising works, right?
Absolutely. Everyone likes to believe that their decisions are rational, and they think about each product and each purchase decision wisely, and they look at the research and they look at guides like Consumer Reports, and they make an educated decision. But in reality, it's almost always an emotional decision.
It is always an emotional decision, and then because we want to believe that we are rational humans, we first make our decision, and then we put a framework on it to justify for ourselves and possibly those who ask why we made the decision that we made. So and again, that's why advertising works, right? And that's why emotion is so important when it comes to advertising and when you present your prices and so forth. So it's I say many times in my talks, not only on podcasts like this, but in my presentation, that if you ever went to business school and learned about pricing, it's time to unlearn it, right? So
and Per, let's take a hypothetical example. Let's say there's a company and they just recently started a business and they're offering some kind of a service in a particular city. It could be something simple like landscaping, but I want to use the example of it being a commodity, right? In other words, there isn't a whole lot of differentiating features of this product or service. What can a business owner do to learn or discover what is the ideal price of their product or service?
Well, first of all, there's very, very few true commodities, and I mean, think about how it's all about pricing power. Is a term that was initially coined by Warren Buffett, and what he said is that his most important criterion for where he invests his money is whether a company has pricing power or not. And then he continued to define pricing power as the ability to increase pricing and not lose sales volume, right? And that is something that happens when you have been able to decommoditize yourself to some extent. And just as an example, think about all the millions and millions of money the gas companies, fuel gas, spend on their additive, which is going to make them a little bit different than the next guy, on the corner. and some people believe that, right? Does it make any difference? Test shows that it made no difference whatsoever, but there is an additive, and some people say that I buy gas from this particular company because it has this particular additive, and because of that I'm willing to pay another 5 cents or another 10 cents or 15 cents or whatever it may be for that commodity, right? So it's all about finding a way. And if you sell a product, it could be it could be an added service. If you sell a service, it could be a product. In your particular landscaping example, it could be things like we are actually promising to show up on time, right?
That's right. Yeah. So you would try to differentiate yourself based on the customer experience, for example.
Yeah.
As opposed to just your front lawn is cut down, right?
Yeah, exactly. We are going to show up on time, and if our truck runs over your mailbox, we're going to replace it, right?
That's right. Yeah.
As opposed to just leaving it there,
And I like your earlier example about the gas stations, right? Because gas stations, you're right, it's very hard to differentiate on just some liquid you never even see, right?
Yes.
And so now then the gas stations try to be cleaner, or they try to have a bigger store offering, better coffee, or they have a better location with easier access from the interstate, et cetera. So there's a lot of different ways to differentiate. But I think I fully agree is that you always want to avoid being a pure commodity. You always want to be somewhat different, right? Just to set yourself apart. And maybe
going back to the gas station and it's very interesting because the circumstance around the purchase also makes a big difference, and and two stories here. You can imagine that if you're on the way to the hospital with a sick child, and you're running low on gas, your willingness to pay for a few gallons of gas is pretty high, right? And you just stop at whatever gas station is most convenient, the one that you just about to pass, right? On the other hand, if you're on the way to the in-laws, you probably look for that gas station where you have a loyalty card, or where you get the lowest prices or whatever, because the circumstance is very different. And because of that, your willingness to pay is very different, right? And another story on that is that on the 15 freeway from Los Angeles here to Vegas, there is a fairly long stretch, maybe, I don't know, maybe 50 miles or so, maybe 80 miles, where there's only a single gas station, right? And we stopped there to buy, some water or whatever it was a couple of years ago, and lo and behold, I realized that the gas there was twice the price of where it is elsewhere. So they took advantage of their location. Now, of course, very few people pay $8-9 for a gallon of gas. But it's cheaper than actually running out in the middle of the desert, and so it's worth it, and for the gas station, it's obviously hugely profitable, right? So,
yeah, I think that's an excellent example, right, of somebody who bought like the perfect location. And they have almost a monopoly, right? You said maybe for the next, 20, 30 miles in either direction, they almost have like a monopoly power on the gas.
Yeah.
And so that gives them a lot of freedom in the pricing.
That's right.
And let's take it maybe a slightly different direction. And this is not hypothetical. So me and two business partners actually are considering starting a new supplement. In other words, we're talking to various supplement manufacturers, and we plan to basically bring a new over-the-counter medication for migraine, right? To help with the people who suffer from migraines. And we went on Amazon, so I'm very familiar with the current marketplace. So I know what the competitors are like. I know what competing products there are. I know what price point they're at. If a company would be entering the market there, let's say if our goal is to compete on Amazon, as an example, what mistakes do companies like this make when they first decide to come up with a price?
Well, first off, you probably need to look at Amazon as a marketing channel more than a sales channel. And there are ways, and don't ask me how, but I know there are ways of using Amazon to drive business to your website where you can sell it, right? But one of the most first of all, of the three most common pricing mistakes, right? Is the first is to price as competition. And to price as competition is often the first step into that commoditization death spiral. Because you price as competition, and the next thing is you start to market as competition, and your product is like competition. And in a commodity marketplace, the lowest price win, right? And that means that all the vendors get lower and lower resources, and eventually you can't market properly, and you can't do further product development and so forth, and your product, or even your company, ends up on either dead or on life support, right? So it's so important to try to differentiate yourself. Another mistake is to use cost as a basis for your product. Obviously, you shouldn't price below your cost, right? But your costs have nothing to do with the value that you deliver. And let me give you an example of that. And this is also a supplement. company we worked with about a year ago, actually. They came to us with this particular supplement that they wanted to sell, and they told us two things, really. They told us that our cost is about $33, and we have learned that when you sell a supplement, we're going to take cost times 5, you know. So that would make the price 163 if I do calculation correctly here. And then they also told us, but we also know that nobody's willing to pay more than $100. So
how do they know that?
Well, they knew it from gut feel, of course, right? And so we do this project, which means that we go out and we measure what people are actually willing to pay for the specific benefits of that specific supplement, and we find that the people are willing to pay up to $200 for a month's supply. So had this company not engaged us, right, two things would have happened. Either they would have said, all right, we have to be at $99, and instead of 5 times the cost, they would be 3 times the cost, which is possibly okay. On the other hand, if they did the 5 times, they would be at that 160. Is it 163? And they were leaving. Then they were leaving. They were leaving $27 on the table, right? And it's a supplement that really adds a lot of value. So I mean, so cost, either which way, they either would have had too low margin, they would have left money on the table. And what we could tell them was that they could actually make more money by pricing correct and pricing to what people are actually willing to pay.
Interesting. And it sounds like you have to do market research to have a better idea or better understanding of that potential customer.
Yeah, you have to do market research. This is what we do in my company is willingness to pay research, which is, you can call it market research, but it's very different than traditional market research. And the story here that could be interesting for the audience here is that I had a chance to run a couple of companies in Europe, and then I came here to the States and established a division of a fairly large public company and brought that up. And then I had another 4 CEO positions. And we did experiments with pricing in all of these instances. And some of those experiments were very successful, meaning that next quarter revenues are up like 25%. Others were complete duds. And what I had learned in business school, and we talked about that earlier, about pricing, was so academic and theoretical that it was completely useless, right? So 15 years ago, I decided I was too old and too opinionated to be a hired gun. And I set up my own shop, and I took that interest in pricing to develop a process to make every pricing experiment a success. And that process, in short, consists of doing that willingness to pay research, which is a particular methodology that we have developed, where we can accurately predict sales volume and revenue and profits at different price points. And those straight line demand curves that you see or that they teach you in business school, a real demand curve is jagged, and it goes sort of up and then it goes down. And the price that leads to the highest sales volume, and the price that leads to the highest revenue, and the price that leads to the highest profits are all different, right? And then we take that and we segment it. So we can tell our clients what customer profile would lead to the highest sales volume, revenue, and profits. What product features support higher prices? What marketing channels and messages would lead to higher sales volume and profits than other marketing messages and so forth. And the same with sales channels. And finally, how to stratify the pricing strategy to minimize friction and maximize sales volume and profits. So it's
interesting. Yeah.
And it was, you know, I developed this because this is what I thought to myself that I would have needed in those other instances to figure out why some of those experiments worked and others didn't. And why would I need that? Well, so I could do it again repeatedly, you know.
And Per, if I could ask for some examples, because I'm sure you have many such examples, but let's say somebody has a product, and let's say the price of the product is $60 and they're selling X units per month, and they think, oh, you know what, I want to increase sales. And there's just this natural assumption, this tendency to say, well, I got to lower prices, right? So let's say they drop the prices and all of a sudden sales drop instead of increase, or vice versa. You increase the price and all of a sudden you're selling more. Can you give us some examples of how that works?
Oh, when we are being presented with a price of a product or a service, that price itself sets an expectation of benefit. Expectation of benefit and quality. And if that price is what we perceive being too low, it sets an expectation of inferior benefit and quality. And if you then lower the price, the lower the price, the more potential buyers would have that expectation of inferior quality, and therefore the lower the price, the lower the sales volume. And likewise, if you have a higher price, expectation bias sets an expectation of higher benefits and higher quality. And if your price is too low and you increase prices, then your sales volume is going to increase. And let me just give you one example of that. This is a company we helped a couple of years ago. They have a SaaS solution, and they were very underpriced. So we measure what people are willing to pay. We look at their prices, and we can see that they were very underpriced. So we told them that they could actually quadruple prices, right? Quadruple. Now, they didn't quadruple overnight. They inched up this about, over a 9-month period or thereabouts. And when I then checked in with the CEO, he said, well, 2 things happened, he said. First off, our sales volume went up with 25%, and this is at 4 times the prices. And then he said, and we got rid of the bottom feeders. So now we have a more professional level customers, and our customer support costs have gone down with 80%.
Amazing.
Because your price also tells, select your customer.
That's right. And I think that is the ultimate luxury every business owner is aiming for, right? Is that at some point you can, as they say, fire your customer, right? If you have some really customers that are very needy, are always complaining, always asking for refunds, just always giving you bad ratings, bad reviews, sometimes it's more profitable just to let them go. It's almost counterintuitive, but a lot of this particular discussion is. I'm absolutely floored that this company was able to quadruple their prices.
I mean, they're not the only ones. Wow. I have multiple clients in my company who once they learn how to price and understand the power of pricing and put pricing as a centerpiece in their business strategy, they price. First of all, there are many small decisions within the company that it's going to be different, because they're always going to think of, can we take price in this product? Can we minimize our discounting? Can we unbundle? Can we bundle? I mean, all these small decisions that when compounded creates enormous differences. And I have many clients who are 10x the size they were when we started to work with them, 5x the size. companies who just overnight see a 50% increase in revenue, right?
And Per, if I can ask you for one more example, I believe that on your profile you mentioned a company by the name of Sound Unlimited. And you helped grow their annual sales from 100 million to, I believe, 1 billion, right? Which is phenomenal. It's a 10x growth in revenues. Can you tell us a little bit more about how that happened?
Well, Sound Unlimited, they're one of the leaders in they're a holding company and own a bunch of the brands in the home theater field, and we simply what we did was that we taught them how to use pricing as and we worked with some of their portfolio companies as well, specifically with pricing. But we taught them how to put pricing as the centerpiece of their business strategy, and how they should be, very very cognizant of that. Whenever you can take price, right? And don't believe what resellers say, because they always want lower prices.
And sorry, Per, can you go back to that previous statement? You said, whenever there's price, take price. What does that mean exactly?
What I'm saying is that look for every opportunity to look for every and all opportunities, which sometimes is very small, sometimes could be very significant in, again, like I said, increase prices, or bundle or unbundle, or find new ways to charge your clients in ways so that you become more profitable. Now, why is that important? Well, because profits is what drives every company. If you don't have profits, eventually you're going to die, right? And there is such a focus in American businesses on revenue, which is not profits, right? and there is a calculation that you can do, actually. But just to give you some example, when you bought an iPhone, right? It used to be that you got your phone, you got some earbuds, you got a little charger and a cable, right? Not so anymore. You get your iPhone, you get a cable, no charger, no earbuds. And I did when Apple did that change, which was like 3 years ago, I think, to sort of unbundle. And if you wanted your earbuds, you had to buy them. If you wanted your charger, you had to buy them, and so forth. And I made a sort of back of a napkin calculation of, I guessed how many will buy a charger, how many will buy a cable, how many will buy earbuds, and so forth. And based on my fairly lowball guesses, right, that would add about $4.5 billion to their bottom line. Now, yeah, obviously they're a big company, but as you start thinking about how you can tweak things like that, constantly. So, but there's another calculation that I think is really important, and that is that if you think about any company, the resulting profitability, and profits is so important because that is what leads you to the resources to market more, to do more product development, to do more service development, to serve your customers better, even to hire better people, right? And if you any company, its resulting profit comes from only 3 variables. That's how simple it is, right? It is the cost of the entire operation. It is the sales volume of the entire operation. And it's the price of whatever you sell. And For the average company, if you can increase, and doing a thought experiment here, if you change any of these three 1%, and if you can increase your sales volume with 1%, profitability goes up 3.5% for the average company. If you can reduce your cost with 1%, profitability goes up with 5.5% for the average company. If you can increase your price or decrease your discounting with 1%, for the average company, profitability goes up with 11.3%. All right.
Incredible. Yeah, incredible.
Now, I have done something. Once you know this, I have something that I call the 1% challenge. Do you know what it is?
No.
Have you ever failed to change anything 1%?
Probably not. If I really put my mind to it, I can squeeze 1% out of it. Yeah.
I think so, you know. So you squeeze. So look at your look at the company, you know, and talking to the audience here. Look at your company and you say, can I increase my prices 1%? Can I increase them 3%? And by the way, why don't we start to say that salespeople can only discount 10%, not 15%, right? And suddenly you have doubled your profits, right? If you're like the average company.
Makes sense. It makes sense. Yeah, as soon as you were talking about a few minutes ago about Apple, you know, debundling the little chargers, etc., that reminds me of a very similar story. So 15 years ago, I briefly had a part-time job in Staples Business Depot, you know, as a sales associate. I was on the floor in uniform helping people select out laptops and other electronic components. And that's when it dawned on me, you know, how at that time, this was 15 years ago, for the brick and mortar, you know, store that Staples was, just how they also use the same idea to drive sales, because what they would advertise is, for example, a laptop. So they would have these flyers and everything. Oh, buy this laptop for $599.99, right? And people, oh, well, that's a good deal. So people come in, and I think Staples, don't quote me on this, but I think they sold that laptop at cost. They didn't really make a whole lot of money. The point was to get people to come in the door.
Sure.
Because if that's the big ticket item, that's what they're focused on. And they think, oh, I got a great deal. I paid $599 for this amazing laptop. But while they're there, they're probably going to buy a mouse and a mouse pad. They're going to get a laptop carrying case. And no one really knows, like, what's a good deal for a laptop carrying case? $30, $35. And so all of a sudden there's ways to actually have a profit because they're in the door. And I remember, of course, management at the time was really pushing the sales associates to sell extended warranties. So the extended warranty was the real, that's where all the profits were, right? If you sold $100 or $150 3-year extended warranty on a laptop, most of that was almost pure profit, right? I mean, Staples takes that extended warranty, they sell it to a financing company. They know that most people will just lose that receipt anyway and never collect. And it's almost basically money in the pocket. And so you can almost like have this one product where you're not making all that much money, but it just brings people in the door. And then now you have an opportunity to sell all kinds of products.
Yeah, loss leader, eh?
Yeah. Another trick that I come across quite often on SaaS, software as a service type things on the internet, for example, just an example, let's say antivirus software, right? And so, I want to buy some antivirus protection for my laptop. Who doesn't? And all of a sudden, I see 3 different tiers. You know, there's the basic for like $9.95 a month. There's the medium level for $39.99, and then they create like an elite pro version for like $99 a month. And most people will not choose the $99 one, but the existence of the $99 one all of a sudden makes the $39.99 medium option look like a good deal.
Yeah, but there's a absolutely right. But the way you present prices is important, and that's something called it's called price anchoring. So what you want is you want to start with your high price, and as we read left to right, you want to start with that super expensive, whatever you want to call it, platinum version, and then you have the middle one, which is the one you really want to sell, and then something that is too cheap and too limited, so nobody wants it. And price anchoring, going back to Apple, the most brilliant example of price anchoring I've ever seen was when Apple came out with a watch. And so they launched the regular Apple Watch at $349, but at the same time they launched a version of it at $17,000.
Now, say that again. 17,000.
17,000. It the exact same electronics in a golden case, and obviously there was lots of there were lots of journalists that was writing about this, and they all talked about the audacity of Apple to sell the same electronics for 17,000 and for $349. And of course, anybody who were in the business or were interested in being an early adopter specifically for that Apple Watch, they read these articles, and it was 17,000 versus 349, 17,000 versus 349, and that 349 became more and more and more affordable.
And I bet Apple got a lot of free publicity out of it too, because like you said, everybody wants that clickbait headline, $17,000 gold watch. I bet you Apple got a lot of mileage in the press with that one.
That's right. And in fact, I've been I've been advising a whole bunch of restaurants, on how, when the menu is a price list, right? And and how you want to have up on the left corner, you want to have something god awful expensive, a family meal for four with whatever the expensive thing is on the menu, with all the wine and all the beer and everything, and it's going to be hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars, and then you have your little your little hamburger at $8.99, and it's going to be very, very affordable. So
I'll have to look out for that next time I go to a restaurant. I'll see if they're following that idea, but it definitely makes sense.
Yeah, there are other ways of and this is all have to do with I talked in the beginning of this talk. I talked about behavioral economics and how we as humans are and by the way, the name I forgot is Daniel Kahneman. Is how everything influence how we make our purchase decision, and all this surrounds is something that's called the decision landscape, and that is both external and internal influences. Internal is something called heuristics, and how we in the blink of an eye decide what we're going to buy, right? And and how you as a seller can influence that decision by how you present the price, how you present your value proposition, right? And so forth. And savvy companies take advantage of that. But there is an interesting thing here too, because this leads to that expectation bias, among other things that I mentioned. But expectation bias has another component to it. And that is when you bought something that you think is pretty expensive, your customer satisfaction increases. And for example, there's been academia, there's been multiple examples on how, for example, how a 5-cent aspirin is not very good to curing your headache, whereas a 50-cent aspirin is a lot more effective. And that goes into everything, right?
It's very counterintuitive. But it makes sense. Yeah.
I call myself to be a little bit of an audiophile, and there are people in that community that pay pay like $3,000 for a 3 feet long USB cable, right? Or $5,000 for a power cable. And there's no way that technically this can make any difference whatsoever, right? But they hear a difference. They bought something expensive, they expect a difference, and therefore they hear a difference. So they are happy customers, right?
Yeah, it sounds like it's going back to what you mentioned at the beginning of the episode, where people make a decision first and they rationalize later.
Oh, absolutely.
And I think it's part of the rationalization process. Oh no, I hear the difference for sure. I definitely hear the difference. Yeah.
So, and I don't, because I don't believe it. I can hear differences in other ways, but not by changing a USB cable and stuff like that. So.
And Per, if we could get back a little bit more to the market research that you and your team performs, right? And I think how do you come over that difference? Or how do you overcome that barrier where people are sometimes not honest with themselves or not honest with you, right? So if you put a survey in front of somebody and say, how much would you pay for this, right? And they say, oh, I would pay $100, but in reality they wouldn't, right? And how do you overcome that?
Well, first of all, you have to realize that the research we do, first of all, we have a whole series of questions in these surveys that we do, where we ask people to equate value and price, right? What is too low value, what is too low price, what is too high price, what is too low high value, and so forth, you know. And so it's not, you can't ask people what they're willing to pay. That doesn't work. Now the other thing to realize is that, yeah, there will be people who lies. There will be some people who are truthful. There will be some people who lie. And in either way, the result is better than guessing, better than cost plus, better than looking at a competitor and setting the same price. And it really always work, right? And now I used to, you know, often in these interviews, I talk about a way that a small new company can do this, you know, in a, you know, very cost efficient way, and that is to go out to the marketplace, and I'm saying find at least 25 potential customers. Now, those are not your existing customers. Those are not your prospects. They're absolutely not friends and family. Now, if you can't find 25 potential customers, you have bigger problems than pricing, right? And I say, do this. Talk to these 25 people, one-on-one, of course, and describe your product or service, and then ask them two questions. One is, now, when you know the benefits of this new product or service, what is the price that is just barely so low you don't think you want to buy it because you think that we're over-promising and going to under-deliver? And you get a number. Then you say, and then we think about the flip side. Think then again that we are going to under-promise and over-deliver, and the product or service is going to be better than you expect. But what is still a price that is just barely a little too high for you to be able to buy it. Once you've talked to 25 people and you have the answer to those questions, you average the results, and suddenly you have the range of where your prices should be. Not below this price and not above that price. Right? It's not the you won't get the optimum price, but you're at least in the ballpark, right? And obviously then you want to price towards the high end of that spectrum.
And I imagine if you're pricing toward the high end, then you still have the option to offer discounts or lower the price if you need to, but it's much harder to go the other way.
It's not impossible, but it's harder. right?
Mm-hmm.
You can always discount more, you can always lower your prices, but we talked about Sounds Unlimited here, and one of their competitors, right, came to us and they said, we had this problem. He said, we had this problem. We had our one of our premium home theater receivers or whatever it was that was sold at, I think it was 3,600 or thereabouts. And salespeople were complaining, saying that this is just way too expensive. So, salespeople eventually convinced the company to lower the price to 2,800, so 800 less. And as a result of that, they lost half the sales volume. You know, and
incredible.
And then they tried to jack up the price again, and that didn't work at all, right? Just massive. So they had to develop a whole new version of that product, which took them like 9 months or thereabouts before they could introduce it back to the price where it was before, you know, and it almost killed the company.
Yeah, that's an absolutely scary story. I mean, any entrepreneur hearing that story, I mean, yeah, and I kind of understand what you mean in that I used to work in the auto industry in the Midwest, in the Detroit area, and I was there working in the auto industry in 2008, 2009 when, you know, GM went bankrupt and Daimler went bankrupt and Ford almost went bankrupt.
Yeah, and
you know, they were at a point, you talk about the commodity death spiral, right? I mean, they were selling their vehicles at a certain price point and they were losing money on them, right?
Yep.
The companies were bleeding cash. And as soon as they tried to raise the price of their vehicles, nobody would buy them, right? Because they had a whole bunch of options that were at a better price. And so, yeah, it can be a very difficult hole to climb out of. Yeah.
Well, they tell you a story about that. One of our returning clients was a brand president for one of the big threes, and at this particular company, the pricing of a new vehicle was a CEO decision. So he told me this story on how they they've done oodles of research to figure out what the optimal price would be for this new car, and they set up a meeting with the CEO, who, you know, he waltzes in, and he looks at 2 slides, never listens to anything, and says, "No, it's going to be $3,000 less," and waltzes out.
Oh, geez, unbelievable. I mean, that story in itself explains a whole lot.
Yeah, and this story is from the probably early 1990s, so it's a long way away. But you know,
and you know, I was on the back end of that, where I was working for a company that was a supplier. Like, we were supplying parts to the big three that would right into the factory, right into the cars. And I remember, like, those parts, you know, when the customers came to negotiate, when the big three representative came to negotiate, I mean, the prices were down to 1/100th of a penny. You know, like, the price of this part is going to be $5, $5.6323. And if you could reduce the price of your part by 10 cents, I mean, people were just jumping up and down in joy, saying, you know, they can save 10 cents on a vehicle or something. I mean, it was, I'm not exaggerating. Yeah, it was incredible.
No, they are very, reading, what was it? Lee Iacocca.
Yeah, that's right. Lee Iacocca for Daimler. Yeah.
He Ford, actually. He was the he was the creator, if you like, of the Ford Mustang.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I know him from. I think that was previously, because I know him from the guy who brought in the Chrysler minivan that saved Chrysler.
Yes.
Back in the but before that, he probably worked for Ford. You're right. Yes.
And he complained in his book that for the Mustang, they had to use only one light for the blinkers, for the indicator, so not having two lights on the dashboard to see which one is, whether it's blinking right or left, but just a single one to indicate that it's blinking. So
unbelievable.
That's unbelievable.
But Per, I mean, I find this topic absolutely fascinating. And I want to talk about your book. So you recently released a book, right? It's called The Price Whisperer, A Holistic Approach to Pricing Power. It's on Amazon. Tell us a little bit more about what can people learn from the book?
Well, I spoke to a customer yesterday, and he said, I read it, front to cover. I just loved it, he said. And we talked about having some spectacular result when it comes to pricing. And if you, let me paraphrase another company I spoke to Friday last week. They said that they had a consultant come in, and the consultant said, "Yeah, well, you just increase your prices." Right? They increased their prices, and it failed miserably, right? Because they were already overpriced, and price does not live in a vacuum. Everything you do in your company affects how you can price. How you target customer affects how you can price. How you market affects how you can price. Your product or service features and functions and benefit affects how you can price. Your selected sales channels and sales methodology affects how you can price. And the price itself often need to be stratified in such a way that it makes sense to your customers, and just jacking up the price without understanding that you may have to change your customer targeting. You may have to change your marketing. You may have to change the benefits that you push in your marketing. You may have to have a different channel or a different way of selling, right? To earn the right to have higher prices. That doesn't come automatically, but when you do all this, then it leads to these spectacular results, and that's the holistic view. To understand that that everything you do, I mean, I had a client a couple of years ago, and they were a marketing service company, and one of the things that the CEO came to us and said, this is about the customer experience and how that affects not only pricing but sales volume. He said, we're really good in closing these really big accounts, but they never work with us for more than 6 or 9 or maybe a year, 12 months, and then they're gone, and then we can never reestablish the relationship. And then he continues and said that, and this is so important for us. So the account manager for these accounts is one of our executive VPs, right? And this executive VP was a very attractive, fairly young woman, right? And she was probably competent in many ways. And we dealt with the company for 3 months or so as we did a project, and I dealt personally with this executive VP in that. And once she started to be sort of familiar and we knew each other, right? As she would knew their key customers, or the key customers would knew her. She started to use such faux language that I'm not sensitive to that at all, right? But it became an issue, right? And obviously this never percolated to the CEO. Nobody told him that, but she was just chasing them away by using so foul language. It was unbelievable, right?
That's
so
yeah,
the customer. I mean,
yeah.
so what does this have to do with pricing? It had really nothing to do with pricing, but it has to do with that everything you do in your company actually affects your business, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And the one example that you brought up is something that I see every day in work, right? I mean, I still have a 9 to 5, and I'm working in corporate America, but in any company, if you have one bad employee, that one bad employee can undo the good work of 9 other employees.
Oh,
like it's not a 1-for-1. Like no. One bad employee, you need like 10 good employees to make up for the one bad one. Sometimes
at least 10. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So anyway,
and as we move to wrap up this podcast, tell me, are you currently taking on new clients, and how do clients work with you? How can they learn more about your company? How do they get in touch?
Well, the best way of finding me and finding my company and finding my book, I have a YouTube channel and finding, I have a bunch of guides that you can download for free and stuff like that. It just Google search The Price Whisperer. I'll show up everywhere.
You should trademark the name. I mean, it's such a catchy name, per The Price Whisperer.
There's actually, so that there's a company called Redfin that is in the real estate field. They have the trademark, and they used to have a service they called The Price Whisperer, which was a way to value your house before you want to sell it, right? They don't have that service anymore. They haven't had the service for, I don't know, 7-8 years or something like that, but they still own the trademark. So
I'm sorry to hear that, Per.
and I've been working with a trademark lawyer trying to because we're obviously in very different businesses, but the patent office didn't believe our that we're different enough, so. But how we work with clients is that we typically want to work with them for about a year. We do one of these, we call it a predictive sales analysis, where we do this research that we talked about, and we advise them on customer targeting, on marketing, on product to market fit, and sales channels and methodologies, and of course pricing strategy. And over that year, as they implement our recommendation, as feedback from the market, they hear feedback from the market, we often go back into the data and continue to analyze more, or maybe do even micro projects and stuff like that. And then at the end of the year, we redo the initial project, and then we do a gap analysis, so we can see what has happened during that year. And what that means for our clients is that we're talking about financially, it's a very affordable monthly retainer, right? And something that even small companies can afford,
And currently, how many different clients do you have at the moment, and how big is your team?
No, we're only a few people, I have a couple of guys here in Los Angeles, a couple of guys in Europe, and it looks like I'm getting one guy in Asia as well. And we developed AI software that helps us with analyzing the data that we capture, and I mean, currently we have We have one client who's pre-revenue. We have one client who's only a few 100,000 in revenue. One is roughly 3.5 million. Actually, two of them that is in that space. One is about 32 million, one is 440, and one is 7 billion.
Wow.
That we work with. So it's all over the place.
Excellent. Excellent. Per, I'll put all that information into the show notes about your website, your YouTube channel, and of course, your book. And I really enjoyed this conversation. I think it's an absolutely fascinating topic. And I think it touches every single business out there. I mean, every business at some point has to think about pricing and make some difficult decisions. So thank you very much for your time. I really enjoyed it, and have a wonderful night.
Gabor, thank you so much for inviting me, and I enjoyed this talk as well. And I hope the audience did too.